Hello, everybody. Is this a wonderful October day or what? First of all, I'd like to welcome those of you who are from out of town to Salem, and those of you who are Salemites to the Salem Witch Trials Memorial. I'm Shelby Hypes. I'm the chair of the Salem Award Foundation. And our mission is to help keep alive the lessons of the Salem Witch Trials, which we do in a number of ways. One is working with the museum and the city to preserve the memorial. We also give an award every year to a champion of human rights, and then we have a series of educational programs. And it is my pleasure to welcome you today to one of our tent talks, which are very brief, as we say, 16.92 minutes long, on various subjects. And I am delighted to introduce our speaker as well. Many of you from out of town may not know it, but you are probably here because of her. Kate Fox is actually the executive director of Destination Salem. We call her our tourism czar. She has worked with tourism organizations all over this area and with the city for many, many years. There probably isn't anything you could ask her that she wouldn't have an answer for. And out of all of her knowledge, she has come up with a little talk today about misperceptions about the witch trials. Most of us know at least a superficial amount, but we don't always know some of the real facts, and that's what Kate's here to talk about. Thanks.
Thank you, Shelby. Thanks for coming, everyone. I feel like I should start by saying I'm a marketing professional, not a historian. And I like to say that I know a little bit about a lot of things. And Salem is a tremendously dynamic place that has a lot of stories. So it's very difficult for me to dive really deeply into any one story. But the Salem Witch Trials is certainly our most compelling. My friends at the National Park Maritime Site might disagree, but the Salem Witch Trials, I think, is the most compelling of our stories because of the lessons that relate from 1692 to modern-day culture here and around the world. For that reason, I love the Salem Award Foundation, and if you are not familiar with the Salem Award Foundation, please go to salemaward.org and check out everything that they do, from the memorial to the Salem Award each year, because this is a way that the legacy is being preserved for years to come and years past from what happened in 1692. So that's my shameless plug for the Salem Award Foundation.
Thank you, since I forgot to do it.
No, it's just, it helps us keep the conversation going, and that's what's so important about 1692, because the conversation is always sort of going, and sometimes it's going in the wrong direction or in its own direction, and that's what I'm going to be talking about today. When I started at Destination Salem in 1998, I will never forget, and I was brand new. I had just moved here from Colorado, and I knew, what everybody knows about the witch trials, what the history books told me in third grade, and what I read in the Scarlet Letter, and the Crucible when I was in high school and college. So not a whole lot. And somebody called and said, "What time do they feed the witches?" And I thought, we have some opportunity for education and interpretation. So here are my top 10 misperceptions and misconceptions about the Salem Witch Trials. And a lot of this information is fed to me. The answers are fed by historians and the people that are doing the real work, the hard work, and the research about the Salem Witch Trials. And there is information on salem.org about all of that and links. So I invite you to visit our website at salem.org as well. So number one, it all happened in Danvers, not Salem. We're just trying to make a buck off this whole thing. And a lot of things did happen in Danvers. Back in 1692, Salem Village and Salem Town were two separate things, and Salem Village is now Danvers. They wanted nothing to do with the witch trials, so they changed their name. But it also happened in Andover and Gloucester and Ipswich and Boston, and it all converged here in Salem where the trials happened. So the Salem Witch Trials, they absolutely happened in Salem, and all of the people accused were brought here for trial, the people who made it to trial. So that is why we are now remembered for the Salem Witch Trials, and Danvers does have very significant sites still standing that are related to 1692 and a beautiful memorial. So if you are really here to explore the Salem Witch Trials, I recommend going to Danvers, because that is an important piece today. But the trials happened here. Gallows Hill is a soccer field today. Maybe, but maybe not. When people call and ask me for directions to Gallows Hill, I tend to send them here instead. We don't actually know for sure where Gallows Hill was, or if there was a gallows, or if there was a hanging tree. And depending on which historian you talk to, you might get a different answer to that question. Where is Gallows Hill? What is Gallows Hill? It changes, and the history changes, and the research changes, and it evolves as more details emerge and more scientific process becomes available. So there is a neighborhood called Gallows Hill. There is a soccer field on top of a hill. There are big trees. I don't know that there's a lot of proof that that's where the gallows were. And so this beautiful memorial is where we recommend people come and remember their ancestors, remember those who died in 1692. The House of the Seven Gables was not part of the Salem witch trials. It's big and it's black and it's old, so people think that it is. People think that it's haunted. I hear lots of stories. They hear lots of stories about the House of Seven Gables. And it does date back to 1668. So it was here during the Salem witch trials, but the house itself does not have any direct ties to the witch trials, other than Nathaniel Hawthorne's great-great-grandfather, Judge John Hathorne, who is buried behind us in the cemetery, being connected to Nathaniel Hawthorne, who wrote the book The House of the Seven Gables, which is a work of fiction. So there is connection, but the House of the Seven Gables, there weren't examinations, there weren't direct ties to the witch trials of 1692. The witch house, the Conant House over on Essex Street, was here in 1692 and does have direct ties to the witch trials, and that is the only site in Salem still standing with those direct ties. And it is thought that perhaps some examinations happened there, but we do know that Judge Jonathan Corwin lived there. The victims were really witches. This is doubtful, and it's equally doubtful that the accusers were witches. The Salem witchcraft trials were a social hysteria that spun out of control, and I don't think we have to talk more about who was witches and who was not. The accused were sworn to determine if they were a witch. This one is on here because of some recent TV shows that use in their opening graphics. And people talk about swimming of a witch all the time, but there's a new TV show that the opening credits, they show the dunking or the swimming of a witch. And nobody was swum here. This practice was widespread in Europe. It was used once in Connecticut that we know of, but it was never used in Salem. And the whole, you may have heard, is she a witch or isn't she a witch? If she sinks, she's not a witch. If she sinks, she's not a witch, but she's dead. And if she floats, she is a witch, and you're going to hang her. Or him. So there's a problem there with that logic. Victims were burned at the stake. Also not true. In Salem, witchcraft was a felony. It was not heresy. In Europe, when victims were burned at the stake, it was because they were accused of committing a crime that was heresy. It was a crime against the church. So that's where the burnings came in. Witchcraft was a felony in the colonies, and nobody was burned here. It was all hangings. The hysteria ended in October. This is not true. The Court of Oyer and Terminer was dissolved by Governor Phipps in October, and a new Superior Court was convened to try the remaining witchcraft cases. The Superior Court condemned 3 additional people in January of 1693, but Governor Phipps did pardon them, and those who were still imprisoned on the charges of witchcraft. Not everyone was freed, however, because you did have to pay your prison costs in order to get out, and some people could not afford to do that. And a couple of people did die in prison from not being able to pay for those prison costs. So the Salem witch trials on stage, this is one of my favorites. The Crucible is fiction, not history. It's historic fiction. It's really good historic fiction. It's compelling. It was done by Salem Theatre Company here last year, and it's wonderful. It was just done at the Old Vic in London, and I understand the actor who played John Proctor came to Salem to check us out when he was preparing for the role. So it's done, and there's definitely a great connection, and it continues to promote and market Salem inadvertently. But it was done as allegory by Arthur Miller for the McCarthyism and the House of Un-American Activities Committee, HUAC, when they were having their own social witch hunt. And if anyone's interested in social witch hunts, I recommend going to the Salem Witch Museum and seeing their second exhibit. I mean, you buy the ticket, you see both exhibits, but the second exhibit really talks about the ingredients of a witch hunt and how they're still happening today. On the big screen, Hocus Pocus. Everybody seen Hocus Pocus? the Sanderson sisters, Bette Midler, Sarah Jessica Parker, Kathy Najimy. It's playing on Salem Common this Saturday night. It's free, 6:30. Go see it. It was filmed here. It's fiction. Witches do not ride vacuums instead of brooms. But it's a really good example, and it's a really fun example of the witch trials and Salem witchcraft hysteria in modern film. It's on TV. It's always being representative. Witches are the new zombie. If you didn't know, zombies are so last year. Witches are the thing. So it's always being sort of misinterpreted, and this leads to misunderstandings and misperceptions. So I ask, when you're watching a TV show or a movie about the Salem witch trials, sort of do a mental double check and is this real, is this not, and where can I get the real story, because there's so much fantastic research and history that's out there about the Salem witch trials, including the new book by Catherine Howe that just came out this week, which is the Penguin Book of Witches, and it's a collection of history, and it's a great resource if you're interested in witch history. And on the small screen, there is a new show that started. It came out on WGN Network last year, and they renewed it for a second season, and it's called Salem. They put billboards in all the major cities in America. It's fantastic. Salem in lights. Very loose adaptation of the history of Salem, 1692. Costumes are beautiful. Architecture is beautiful. Not an ounce of it is accurate. Filmed in Shreveport. They built Salem in Shreveport, Louisiana, because there's nothing in Salem. We don't have a set large enough in Salem, so if you go to Salem 1630 in Forest River, Pioneer Village, it's not large enough for a crew to come in and make a movie or a TV show of the scale of Salem. And it was renewed, so there will be more. And then in literature, there's a lot of really great historical literature about the Salem witch trials, and my favorite is Kathleen Kent's The Heretic's Daughter. I also loved Catherine Howe's new book, Conversion, which is a young adult novel, and there's something so yummy about a young adult novel when you're really busy, and you just cruise right through it, and it's so entertaining. And so there's a lot of really good fiction. Kathleen Kent is one of my favorites for writing the witch trials, because she is a descendant of Martha Carrier, and in her book I felt like I was in the cart with Martha Carrier going down St. Peter's Street from the jail to the gallows, and it's beautifully written and very well researched, and that's the key to good historical fiction is having it be well researched and letting us learn something while we're having fun. There's some bad stuff out there too, but in marketing, if we don't have anything nice to say, we don't say anything at all. So those are my 10. Those are my 10 big misconceptions, and when people ask me where I feed the witches, we like to say the Common, 10 and 12 in Salem, in October. So we try to have fun with the history, we try to have fun with tourism, and if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them. Yes? Yep. So the question is, where is the jail? The old jail that was here in 1692 is on Federal Street, and it's now an office building, but it does have a plaque. It's right across from the parking lot on Church Street. There's between Church and Federal. It does have a plaque that says Old Salem Jail, and jail is spelled G-A-O-L. And that is the site. And when they did when they built the building that's there now, they did find a few of it may have been the building before the building that's there now, they did find some of the original beams, and you can see the beams at the Witch Dungeon and the Salem Witch Museum, and I think the Peabody Essex Museum has a third. Hi.
Hi, I have a question. Is it any surprise that the judicial system was involved in this nightmare? You know, maybe the bottom line was to take the properties of people. You know, greed is a terrible thing.
So the question is it any surprise that the...
I wasn't finished.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I just, you know, when they say, you know, don't let history repeat itself, I don't see much difference with what's going on now in the probate court system. It's really broken and run like a criminal enterprise, so not a whole lot has changed. A lot of people lost their lives, and there is something going on, and it's called legal abuse syndrome. I have the book. I read it in 2 days. And you know what? thank you, God. Thank you, God. There are people that understand the total devastation of families. You know.
Well, I think, and
individuals,
I thank you for your comments. I think that it's a good point, and there are historians and there are certainly sites in Salem that talk about the relevance of 1692 to contemporary time. In 1692, it was a very different era than it is now, and I really believe that the judges and the people who...
I think that it's very broken in people that they don't care enough to fix it, because they have, you know, a mission to litigate expeditiously. That means resolve things that aren't that complicated quickly, so that families and children aren't devastated.
So if you know somebody who's working, hold on, I'm going to stop you and say, if you know somebody who's working against that system to make it right in your eyes, you should nominate them for the Salem Award. Because I think that you have a really good point. You are outside of my realm. It's not what I talk
see
about.
The similarities, you know, the
Yeah,
justice
absolutely.
being involved in all these people's deaths, property. You know, there's a lot of similar issues, Kate. That can't be denied. So it's like we've got to.
But I don't think we can address it in 16 minutes and 92 seconds today.
Thank you for
Thank you.
listening.
Thank you for your comments. Do we have another question?
I was going to ask you, what is your favorite aspect of resonating with this subject? If you've got one.
Ooh, what is my favorite aspect that resonates from the Salem witch trials? I think it is the people. I think it's that they were so strong, and these 19 people were hanged, and they went to their deaths believing in their innocence. Last week's tent talk, Eric did a great job talking about the 53 people who confessed, and I think there's so much validity to both sides of the story, but it's just such a compelling story, and the fact that it relates today to so much that goes on around the world, it's always applicable. Thank you.
Thank you, Kate. That was fabulous. And thank you to everybody who showed up. If you're in Salem next Thursday, we'll have another tent talk. Margot Shea from Salem State University will be talking about the memorial itself and its meaning. The week after that, John Keenan will be talking about what it means to be a descendant. And our final tent talk on October 30th features Mayor Kimberly Driscoll talking about being a city of inclusion. So I hope you can join us for any or all of them. Thanks.